Hi everyone. Today I'm really glad to have an opportunity to chat with Illia Polosukhin, co-founder of NEAR. And here in Lisbon, we are going to explore during this conversation the future of Web3 and creator economy. Hi, Illia.
Hey, great to see you.
Good to
Thanks
see
for
you.
inviting.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And so let's start from what you guys building, because NEAR is important piece already of a Web3 infrastructure. And from the time we met in 2018, it seems like your vision, you stick to your vision, like being a sharded blockchain, developer friendly. And what I wanted to ask you, what actually changed? What insight did you have during this path, in your, realization? What really changed in your perception of what you guys building from that time and now?
Sure. I think when we started, we definitely had a lot more focus on scalability. And I think over time, because we talked with so many projects, right, we realized and kind of solidified our vision of being simple, secure, and scalable blockchain, right? And so simplicity, when we talk about it, is really spans from that blockchains are perceived as too complicated, and they perceived because of the tooling, because of wallets, because of seed phrases. There's a lot of kind of pieces that are not natural for normal users. And similarly, if we're talking about developers, they also have a lot of non-natural things they need to learn and kind of overcome a lot of boundaries. And so I would say even in 2018 already, but definitely in 2019, we started to focus a lot more on how do we design something that's actually simple to use, simple to build for, and provide tooling, our account model is very much different from how other blockchains work to really allow easy onboarding of users. And so I think that, is pretty big part of who we are because, again, we believe in mass adoption. We believe in this technology is actually powering most of the activity on internet. And so to achieve that, we really need to bring kind of next billion of people to this technology, and they will not be the technical specialists who are, know how to securely store seed phrases. And so that actually went into security. And I would say this is outside of the securing the blockchain itself, if we talk about the ecosystem as a whole, I would say we've done the least right now. And then this is actually where I'm excited kind of for this year to invest more. And because security is kind of a lot of things, everything from, obviously, cryptography and kind of economic security of the blockchain, but also, again, talking about the user is securing their funds, is making sure the contracts they use are not going to steal their money, is making sure that the website they use is not leaking their seed phrase or information or whatever, right, what's happening. And so, how do we design better wallets? How do we design better experience where users are actually secured, right? And this involves, registries where you can actually see if contracts were audited, right? Right now, given we're in blockchain, it's actually very surprising, but we don't have a smart contract audit registry on chain. And so, actually on NEAR we do, but but in general, right? If you look at some smart contract, you don't know if it was audited unless you go into some website. But that website can be fake, and the audit can be fake, right? And so in general, kind of bringing in a lot of the activity we are doing on chain as we've promised in our vision as a whole space is important, and actually solving these problems of including trust and reputation through some of these instruments and tools, and which in turn kind of make it more secure. And then finally, the scalability, last piece. I mean, that haven't changed much. Obviously, we've learned a lot. We were very arrogant when we started. We thought, well, everything will be done in 6 months, and we know exactly how to do it. It took us about 3 approaches, and I would say we're not finished. We've been designing some new mechanics, both on the kind of high level, how to do sharding, as well as low level, how to do storage, how to do kind of processing of some things. We've also learned, to accept that if big part of the blockchain market, for example, wants to build with EVM, we should have support for that as well. And so kind of really, I would say, learning with this community being the big thing, both from the developers who've been building on Ethereum and other chains, understanding what their actual pain points are beyond just, hey, fees are high. And then converting that into like actual, products, both kind of on a protocol level, but also across the ecosystem.
Yeah, I see. So in basically, what you say also about like usability, it basically for me rings the bells that it's scalability is not only technical, it's also like user base scalability. Yes. So how we can reach to wider audience. And one thing I also noticed which changed and which I'm really happy to observe as a project from part of Near ecosystem is that you also have like focus on creators, and it's even on your website. And yeah, I'm biased, but I think like it's the best decision ever for any Web3 protocol. But what did make you do this? Like, what made you believe in creator economy? Why you think this is important? Like, and basically how you maybe some reasoning behind it, like how you made this decision.
For sure, yeah. So I would say we started being developers ourselves. We started very developer focused, right? We were like, hey, we want to build instruments for ourselves, which solve our own problems. We started, trying to build something ourselves on the blockchain. And kind of through that experience, part of it is developers are creators too. And so through that experience, right, you kind of realize what is the missing pieces that go beyond just writing code, right? And a lot of them kind of span a pretty wide section of things. But then as you bring your friends to this, you bring kind of the community in, the kind of the general realization is that, like, if we're talking about DeFi is really just an instrument for leverage, for kind of liquidity, for moving funds around. If we talk about DAOs and tokens, like fungible tokens as a tool, they really are to bring communities together, right? They're a way to kind of align incentives to create kind of common goals through monetary, but also through some voting, Discord. Like all those tools are just really to bring people together and give them a common goal. But the missing piece here is the kind of in any economy you need production. And so the only digitally native production is the digital creators, right? This is where kind of the new content, this is where the new kind of, let's call them goods, are coming in this economy. And so that's why kind of we formalize that into what we call the creator economy triangle or ownership economy triangle. It's the creator piece, the kind of DeFi finance piece, and the DAO community piece. And so they all flow within each other, because kind of as the creators kind of start to produce different art or content or even marketing, websites, like all of those things, this kind of piece of creation, website, like games, applications, right? That kind of powers that to build a community around it. And then this community issues a token, which creates liquidity, which then in turn attracts more creators who can actually create and kind of start this flywheel. And so for us, like really the important piece is this flywheel that pulls in more and more people. And I think from more kind of from the other side, it's also creators being probably most underserved in the kind of Web2 ecosystem as well, because of platforms like Facebook, like YouTube, that are able to kind of tell their rules because they control the distribution, right? And so we are kind of moving away into this more ownership economy. And so now creators have kind of direct channels to their users through, for example, to their kind of subscribers and fans, through NFTs, through tokens, through like all those DAOs as an instrument. But like they have this direct connection that a platform cannot take it away. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of creates a very both unique opportunity to like bring them up, but also actually like allows them to have a ideally good living and start like actually bringing that part of the world kind of out of the state where like we have such a disparity between technology and kind of creative state.
Yeah, totally agree. And like when you say this, like I always always come to this idea that Web3 like allowing basically to change whole design of this economy from value capture focused to value creation focused. And it's very like natural for Web3 because you own the data, own the assets. And you as a creator, you don't need to rely on someone owning these assets and capturing value from them. You can capture like them without like losing the control of your data. And besides that, like this like very abstract idea of like switching this economy, making it like creator centric. And what do you think like the biggest value Web3 is bringing for creator economy? Like what is like maybe something more specific so that creators can relate, like like something like that can understand?
Well, I think the killer feature so far being royalties is like when you create, like again, is it the digital art or this is a like content or this is a game or something else, right? The whole idea that you can create kind of perpetual stream of revenue from this, independently of how it travels through the market after that creation, or it's been read, or it's been like whatever this shape of consumption is. Like that's unique because if we're talking about artists, like musicians, after they kind of sold their rights to the content, they don't really receive much. Maybe like if the label is charitable, they give them like 14% of future sales, but that like needs a lot of negotiation. But like in art, in like physical art cases, right, it's just like sold and boom, you never see that piece again. Right? But here you have on a smart contract level, on kind of transaction level, receiving royalties, receiving part of that kind of resale price or part of the revenue stream that the company receives or protocol receives that being distributing it for you. And that like kind of obviously attracts people, but also again kind of creates this incentive to offer more and more. But I think what we will see coming up is even more interesting, where the creators themselves, right, because they all have some kind of form of community around them, like there'd be fans, friends, kind of the people who kind of excited about what they're doing. So turning that into a kind of DAOs that are able to, in itself, issue a token and actually capture the value of the whole kind of creator ecosystem, and then maybe a group of creators, right? That doesn't need to be individual. In a token, in some form of kind of shares of this, and then leveraging that through DeFi, for example, to borrow against it, to create, for example, economic incentive, to be able to sell it, right, as a way to raise money for some bigger projects, right? And we already see this in, for example, conferences where they actually issue, like creating NFTs or issuing a token to raise money to do conferences, so they're not as dependent on sponsorships, and being able to be more selective with sponsorships, and then in turn start creating, for example, treasuries for the conference that is able to generate revenue that they can then invest into doing bigger conferences. And in turn, the people who are members of this community are way more aligned with this conference itself, right? They have tickets, they have some passes, etc., right? So really creating kind of more of a community feel, but align around economy and giving money to the system to actually function and have the kind of resources to create something amazing.
Yeah, and besides that, they also might have governance rights, like in this DAO, and really,
they can choose, be editorial on this,
kind of affect, and basically it also gives them more ownership, and it's kind of like really an engine, like to produce more and more and more. When you like have like a vision and a DAO for this, and some structure, and there's already so many tools like royalties, DAOs, like when you can govern like with all your community, like make it like mobilize it, make it more participatory, and it's really a lot we already built, and there's like some obvious things we can do even more, for this, but still. Adoption is not yet that big, like it's still not that massive as we expected it, and I think like we really kind of underestimated this inertia of the current system. Maybe, I don't know, maybe something else. But what do you think hinders this adoption? Because what do you think is important to have this kind of breakthrough?
So mandatory pun, adoption is near. Yeah, so I think kind of the things I mentioned, right? I think right now the combination of it is still hard to use. I think we've done good progress compared to status quo, but still hard to use. And people don't feel secure about it, right? If you go and talk to people who are not technical and you ask them hey, create a wallet, they're like, is this safe? Right? And especially oh, you're gonna receive $1,000 when you sell the things. Like, oh shit, what do I do now, right? That's where we are. And so really addressing these problems, both on technical level, on product level, but also on a kind of mindset level, right? And obviously some of the recent regulations are not helping. So kind of the way I see this, really simplifying the onboarding, right? If we talk about Instagram or anything like that, we should get to that level where you just log in and you're in and you can start taking pictures, being able to create something, uploading stuff, right? And that all kind of creates marketplace. And then off there, people then will learn what are the pieces that they can rely on to have more secure custody and all those things, but that kind of should come next. First, reduce the onboarding flow super early. We had some experiments, they've shown an amazing uptick if you create that experience where you hide the seed phrase. And so the benefit is the nearest build, you can swap the keys, the private keys for your account. So you can actually offer a user an account which you kind of custody, but it doesn't have anything. And so as soon as they have something, you get them to swap keys and actually have self-custody. And so because of this, you lowered your barrier to entry. Now they're in the system with an account. And then when they're actually starting to transact, then you actually get them to do more secure setup. Yeah. And so things like that, really pushing that and then helping them with that secure setup as well. So for example, if we're talking about either making custodial wallets really simple, right? If we're talking about apps like Monobank in Ukraine, the setup is super simple, right? And it's full KYC custody, right? With all the licensing, how do we get to that? Just scan your face, boom, you have a secure custody wallet. Most people will actually be fine with that. And then again, because Near supports you having multiple keys, you can actually have even recovery if the bank or whatever the service that provides custody goes down, you can still recover from, for example, friends or whatever else setup. So how do we make that kind of security and simplicity together in one kind of really easy to onboard products? And I know some folks are experimenting with this in Near and they've seen some interesting results. So I'm excited to see that.
Cool. Yeah. So
and by interesting, I mean hundreds of thousands of users on one day can drop in and share with their friends. They come in and for real, creating actual viral loops of onboarding.
Yeah, basically kind of gradual increase of security and complexity of use. Yeah. We just need kind of build this step by step, so how they can enter. And yeah, we also think it's important internally, and we even think that the whole, even positioning of the company, because what we actually build and how we position to the market is also a little bit different, because we realized that for Web2 industries, for creators, we need to position us we say to them, we are virtual governance for creators. No blockchain, nothing, because you can govern it, you can do something like that. But in reality, there's a lot of things under the hood, technical things, which not necessarily should be highlighted. But it makes this these dual things happening, and when it's hard to balance, you kind of need to do from one perspective. You're a Web3 company, so you need to raise money. You need to really position yourself in all the Web3 ecosystem to let people in the Web3 ecosystem understand what you're actually doing. From another side, you're trying to bring we want to bring another million creators and make them really tokenize these assets through our chain. And obviously also Near ecosystem can benefit from it because like we will because these assets will be flowing within this ecosystem. And imagine what if tomorrow, like maybe not tomorrow, but in a couple of days or months, we have million creators came to our like joined ecosystem, and they did put on chain not only like scarcity assets like art, but these assets which hold like copyright and I don't know some like movie scripts, music, like scientific research, whatever. What do you think?
Those are also scarcity assets.
Yeah, they also scarcity, but also like scarcity plus some intrinsic value, like some like royalties, like what you just described as well. Like so, because it's also a challenge, you know, like to
manage,
to manage this thing. Like, and this is like what we try to do to provide them another type of security. And this is type of security when they think they have security in current world and they don't have it like in on chain because like there's no institutions, you know, like they know they own their assets, but they don't know whether they have like similar things which they have like in real world. And once we have these assets on chain, what do you think can happen? Like let's say like there's billions of assets like locked in the chain. Like how it will affect Near ecosystem and like in general Web3 ecosystem?
I mean, I think how it will affect Near in general Web3 is not as interesting as how it will affect the world, right? Because kind of the benefit of this is that now people can create kind of like the interesting thing always been is kind of co-creation, right? Like no creator, like we're talking about, you know, artist, musician, or a script writer, none of them start from scratch. They always, you know, they take some ideas from different places and they create something new. And right now we don't have a really good way to keep track of this. This is why, you know, like if we're talking about DJs, they actually have lots of trouble with kind of creating their content because they actually pull from a lot of different places and they like just getting rights on all that, right? It's super complicated. And so what I expect as this world kind of realizes, we'll have a lot more this kind of composed content from different sources with attribution, with proper like royalties and everything. And so we'll see a lot more kind of novel and interesting things happening from that because people will kind of like will not be like if I'm in, let's say a script writer and I want to pull in some, you know, Star Wars ideas into my script, like just getting licenses and approvals on that is like an insane amount of work, right? I will just not do it. But we can see, you know, for example, for Star Wars, a lot more novel scripts, which, you know, just kind of attributing to that. And if somebody's using it for a movie, then the kind of the royalties flow into the original, the DAOs that governs the Star Wars universe, right? So really kind of we'll see expansion of existing, more composition from my perspective, and then also new more novel stuff because people will see, hey, if I create a novel, fully thought out world, people can build on it, right? Like similarly how, you know, hey, if I create a new DeFi protocol, people will build on it. Like same idea, but really kind of expanding to the creator space.
Yeah, and in this case, like with Web3, it also will be more like open because you don't need to close an access to be rewarded, you know, like, exactly. And this is, I think, one of the most beautiful things about this concept of creator economy on Web3. And we just need to make sure there is enough incentive to keep this traceability of these like assets, like referencing each other, who used what to create what and so on. And yeah, I think like we're definitely going to this direction. And one thing I think is still missing, and talking to creators, I also see this. So they, as outsiders, like from Web3 industry, they don't know what to choose because they have this mindset, you know, like that they need to choose a platform to operate, and this is a very important choice for them because like it's kind of making a bet. And I think like what they do not get, most of the people, that it doesn't matter because future is multi-chain, and there will be all this asset eventually will be breached, and there will be cross-chain operation. As far as I understand, like you guys also believe in the same future, and you, from the very beginning, were very collaborative with other people and with other chains. Are you still like that? And do you still believe in multi-chain future?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm kind of coming from open source, like doing a bunch of open source before, and so I do believe in working with everyone who wants to work together, right? And then figuring out how, like, what does that look like, and what are the ways to collaborate. And so, what blockchain offers is this ability to link up things in novel ways that, if we're talking about just pure, like, for example, your piece of software depends on their piece of software, right? There's no economics, there's nothing there. It's kind of more of a, listing credits and stuff like this. And so here we actually have a lot more tooling to do that. And kind of early on, we invested in bridging technology to kind of connect to Ethereum, because Ethereum is in many ways the kind of origin of a lot of these ideas. And then right now there's tons of bridges, right, across the whole ecosystem. There's Allbridge, for example, that connects, I don't know, like 25 chains to each other. I think they have like another 15 coming or something. And so at the same time, I mean, a lot of it mostly been focused on fungible tokens, but people are building NFTs and kind of exploring what that looks like. I think the kind of, obviously we'll see how the future looks. There's a kind of a lot of benefit in understanding what are the kind of parameters of each chain, if we're talking about like major layer ones. At the same time, I do see obviously having a bunch of kind of individual chains for specific use cases that are very valuable, because they can actually parameterize and scale differently. And so this is why we've been working with Octopus Network, which is kind of a way to launch a bunch of the side chains or app chains and still connect into the ecosystem, right? And that's why we also have another way, which is like you can launch your kind of chain, but like as a container on Near. And so, yeah, we're exploring. I mean, this space is moving all the time. It's things changing. This is why, Near is never done. Like, it's always going to be evolving. And so, same as our understanding.
Yeah.
We've learned our lesson not to be arrogant here.
Yeah, and at some point we might not even be able to grasp all the knowledge in the space. I think I'm already not able to like keep up with this whole space. Like I just realized that recently that I do not need to, because like it's the amount of knowledge is growing so fast. And but if taking a step back on a multi-chain, like basically future, what do you see is also like hindering like this part, and like what is missing from that perspective when we just submit a transaction and we don't know where it will end up, or like where it will be processed, like and stored, like whatever.
Yeah, well, the chains are not fungible, and I don't think we'll get to that level. I think you can build some tooling like wallets, which are hiding a lot of this, but it's still, like, I don't think it's ever going to get to that, right? But I think using different, like as apps themselves, making it easier to be used, right, then it will become easier and easier to do kind of this transition. So for example, Rainbow Bridge recently launched support, and I think like Origami and a few apps on Aurora are already using it. You can actually, in-app, directly bridge assets. So you can literally deposit tokens from Ethereum, for example, into your app. Like you don't need to bridge and then put, right? Like it's removing one step. Yeah. And so I think like more and more of tooling like that will definitely make it simpler. So like, for example, let's say you have an NFT on Mintbase, you can like list it on OpenSea on Ethereum, right? Stuff like this will make it easier and easier. Now, the problem, for example, is that the standard for NFT on Near is rich and like has royalties embedded, and standard on Ethereum is not, and the royalties flowing back to Near from Ethereum, even if OpenSea is their own standard, won't work, right? So there's a lot of technical details which kind of hinder like hiding it completely. But we can see like, some specific, 80-20 solutions that are able to provide some better experience. But again, I think it will be coming from apps specifically, and then bridges providing these instruments.
Yeah, so basically, once we have in apps, these at least user interface, doesn't matter how it works under the hood, that like you kind of send assets to other application, and you didn't even know where
Exactly.
it's deployed.
Yeah, that's totally doable.
Yeah, that's right. And about standards, like you raised a really important question, because like to develop standards, there should be like specific process for this. Like people were developing standards for like many years, and it's like it's not easy because you need to bring all the players from the industry and kind of provide them incentives to do this, like, and collaborate a lot, like on actually building this kind of like cross-chain, multi-chain standard for like NFT, for DAO, for fungible tokens, for everything. And do you think players ready for this? Like,
mostly not. Yeah, I think the part of it is also just like the chains are different. There's a lot of kind of technical details that you need to account for when you're designing standards. Like if we're talking about near standard, right, there's a number of things that are different. And so you cannot actually do that on Ethereum, for example. And so if you want to make a standard that actually works across chains, then you need someone who actually understands all the details of all the chains. And that is like, there's maybe like 2 people who are like that, right? Like James Press, which probably is one of them. Yeah. And so you really need there is not enough motivation for sure to do that. And so, and obviously, there's still network effects within each ecosystem that kind of more interested in pushing the innovation in that specific ecosystem versus working across.
Yeah, but yeah, I totally agree. So it's like now it's kind of a bit wild still, like, and it's like it's a lot of competition in the space, like, and probably we will get to some point when like chains will be more or less interoperable, like, but not that much, and when we will like hit this wall of standards, and like when we realize, okay, like really this, for example, standard for NFT on Near is really better than others, like how we can just take the best from it, like maybe add something good as well from other chains and make it work on all the chains. But yeah, I also do agree that it does look like it's happening soon, unfortunately. But let's see, maybe when we will bring like millions of assets to Near, maybe people will start to consider creating a standard and at least like look into what Near done for NFTs, like, and what we've done, like, and so on.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. I just wanted to ask you last question. What I want to ask you is, what will you say to people, like to developers, tech entrepreneurs in general, and some creators who think that it's too late to come to Web3 space? Because I know there's a lot of people, surprisingly, like it's, what will you say to them? Because like we need them, right? Like we need them in Web3. Like what will be your words?
Well, I think there's 2 sides of this. I think for creators, I mean, if you decided to be a creator, you didn't think it's too late after a few thousands of years of people making art and creation, right? So, and for tech entrepreneurs, similarly, there's been already 60 years of tech entrepreneurship. It's pretty much, it's never too late, right? The opportunity is massive, and specifically in Web3, it's like insanely massive because we're still, I don't know, maybe like a 10 million worldwide people who actually like interacting with blockchain, and there's still like 7 billion more.
Yeah, still feels really early.
Yeah,
it's I'm just like really surprised as well by people thinking that it's like too late. Like it's like there's no.
I mean, I think this like artificial scarcity mode that crypto kind of been fostering is just like it been fostered to that level that people feel like it's too late. Like it's it's too late to buy in Bitcoin now. Yeah. It's like, well, that's not the point, first of all. Like you don't buy Bitcoin because it's too late or because it's too early, right? You buy it because you believe in some properties or don't believe in some properties, and you don't buy. But similarly in this technology, right? If you believe in the kind of like what we're trying to build here, which part of it is also making sure we don't get into like Black Mirror state of the world, like you want to build for this, and then like either bring your existing creations to this, or create something new with new kind of design space. But yeah, it's not about being late or early, right? It's about actually like building the value and like believing in values and then building the value you can bring on top of it.
Yeah. So, guys, if you believe in value creation, if you believe in democracy, decentralization, it's still not yet late. And
No,
I
it's
think
still not yet achieved, so there's still work to do.
Yeah, and I think it might be never achieved like fully,
Exactly,
like it's like when we achieve, it might be singularity, but this is a topic for another talk. Yeah,
we're gonna get my co-founder for that.
Yeah. That's right. Okay, so thank you, Illia. It was like a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.